One. All right, Stacy, you're on.
Hi, I'm Robert Stacy McCain, and we are here at Harvard University. You can see the statue of John Harvard in the background, and we are here with Kent Haeffner, who is the president of the Harvard Republicans. How you doing, Kent?
Doing good. Thanks for coming here.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here. What is there was a survey done about political opinions among Harvard students. What were the results of that?
Well, the survey came out and we found that there were more self-described socialists than there were conservatives at Harvard's campus. This is done by the student newspaper, confidentially done, secure system. So it was not the most encouraging thing to hear for us.
So there were 16% socialists and 15% conservatives.
Yeah, roughly those numbers. Yeah.
And what is the climate in terms of you've got over 100 members in the Harvard Republicans. How are y'all treated on campus?
Well, I think that we try to go and be respectful in our discourse and treat other people well. Doesn't mean we always have that, but I think for the most part, the administration and other student organizations, for the most part, will treat us with respect and let us express our viewpoints. However, I think that a lot of times there might not be explicit restrictions on what you can and can't say, but there are certain positions that are taboo, certain things that you can't speak out about, and I think a lot of times that there are a lot of debates that should be happening and should be going on that don't.
And do you think that people self-police their speech? Are people afraid to speak out about some of the things?
Yeah, absolutely. And even on things that aren't controversial, for me, I've been lucky to study government, be very involved in politics, and know what I believe and how to articulate those things. For students that are, say you're a conservative engineering student and you really haven't had that exposure, but you grew up in a rural state with guns and hunting and all that other stuff, and you want to go there and someone goes and attacks gun rights, and you really just don't know what to say, and you really can't really go and back up your views. I mean, I know people like that who've had those experiences and just feel very frustrated that when they did go and say something just even briefly like, hey, I think that we should consider this other position, got very much attacked for their viewpoints on those kinds of issues. A police motorcycle has just started up in the background, so that's the noise. Pete, would you like to come a little closer to make us so we can get the audio?
I'll have to zoom back a little bit.
All right.
So to get you both in. That's as far back. I only brought the one camera today, so that's very unusual instead of my normal three-camera set.
What we call technical difficulties. The Harvard police riding their motorcycle behind us.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the 100 people. Now, that's out of an enrollment of 6,600, so it's approximately 2%.
Yeah, that are dues-paying members. I think that we have about 100 folks who are truly active and really engaged in the club. We have a lot of other folks who are, of course, very supportive of the club, who might not be able to come to meetings due to some other commitment or things like that. We have over 500 people on our emailing list. So, I mean, we have a decent-sized number of people who, are at least willing to have our stuff spam their inbox.
Are there closet conservatives? Is there a conservative closet?
Absolutely, I think that there is. I think there's a lot of people who are conservatives but don't want to describe themselves as such, fearing blowback. But I think also, too, a lot of folks are conservative and just don't know it or just aren't exposed to conservative ideas in a lot of cases. I think that there's very much a lack of conservative faculty here. And so I think, unfortunately, a lot of students just don't get exposed to those kinds of viewpoints and so won't really realize that, wow, I actually am a conservative. And I think a lot of times it's a real shame.
You have named some of the professors you have taken who are conservative. Harvey Mansfield, Paul Peterson. What are some of the other professors on campus who are open to conservative ideas?
I think Roger Porter also comes to mind as one. And I think that, unfortunately, that's, as far as the list can truly go, at least in terms of people. I don't want to out anyone, So I think that it's unfortunate that there are, at least those are there are some conservative economics professors such as Greg Mankiw, Marty Feldstein. So there are some, but especially in the social sciences, very much lacking. And the business school is a little bit better, but that's not the college. They're on the other side of the river, and they do their own thing over there.
I just want to make sure to emphasize something. You do not want to out a Harvard College professor for being conservative because a Harvard College professor might have to fear for his job or his safety or his reputation.
Well, I would say that my view is that there are certain professors who are sympathetic, who are not really put out any material or put anything in writing that would be necessarily conservative. I don't want to go and put them in a position that would, I think that it would at certain times cause some tensions in the faculty. And especially you think about a guy like Harvey Mansfield. Luckily he has tenure and he uses that to the chagrin of his colleagues many times. Definitely is someone who is an incredible scholar. You think about the fact that he's translated Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, multiple works of Machiavelli, is pretty much the leading scholar in the world on those things, and yet people will often treat him with a little bit of disdain at times, because of just the fact that he's he's outspoken and he's a bit of a curmudgeon at times for conservative viewpoints, and that's a real shame because I think that professors and folks should actually look at someone like him and be like, wow, this is someone who's very rigorous in his study, who's incredibly knowledgeable, who's thoughtful in his conversation and stuff like that. And I think that there are certain professors who at times might have some conservative views on certain issues and might not be willing to go and be as explicit as those because they fear that that's what they'll become known for. They'll become known for as the conservative professor rather than having folks look at their scholarship.
Yeah, speaking of Harvard alumni, Charles Murray
Yes.
spoke on campus here last night. You were here for that. What was that like?
Well, I first have to put a huge thank you out to the Harvard University Police and the Cambridge Police. I think they did an excellent job of making sure that the event was safe and secure. I think the success of the event was very much due to that and their efforts. I think that they did an impeccable job, and want to thank them for that. Very significant amount of security, checking bags, making sure there's only Harvard College students only, checking IDs and all that. Couldn't bring in a water bottle, couldn't bring in an umbrella. I mean, it was very tight security. But however, I think that the event went really well. The conversation was fantastic. I think Charles Murray is someone who, even if you might not agree with his views, is someone who tries to go and back everything that he says with evidence and thought and intelligence. And I think that folks who do disagree with him, especially on chapter 13 of the bell curve, I think would be wise to go and actually read it, understand it, and perhaps even have a conversation with Dr. Murray, because he's more than happy, and he discussed it last night about clarifying what he actually meant by what was there. And I think that in general, the focus of the talk was on his recent book Coming Apart, and I think it was just especially at a place like Harvard, which is he calls it the new upper class. It's very this is kind of a place that's very endemic of that. So I think it was a really powerful statement for him to be able to go and talk about that with the folks who are in many ways forming that new upper class. And I think the conversation was vigorous, and I think it was one that is a perspective that not many people hear and is very enriching.
One of the things that Charles Murray talks about in the parts of the bell curve that are not controversial is cognitive partitioning, assortative mating, and the formation of this separate cognitive elite that, you're an example, you're a senior at Harvard, and it's sort of by the nationalization of the elite universities, the Ivy League in particular, but also Stanford, Northwest, Chicago. These elite universities separate out the brightest minds from the rest of America in a way that creates this tension between the rest of the nation and the elite. How do you think that is being bridged?
Well, I think that unfortunately there aren't many efforts to bridge that. I think that I'm lucky in that, even though I grew up in South Florida, my parents, originally families from the Midwest, and, so going there to visit family very frequently, visiting the family farm and working the cornfields for a few days. I mean, you really get a sense of what Dr. Murray talks about in that disconnect, to work with your hands, or there's this whole mainstream of American culture that folks here just really don't get in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, I don't think that the appropriate efforts are being made by Harvard or these other institutions to really bridge that. And for me, it's always something that I've tried to be very aware of. Either reading Dr. Murray's book, or even if you just go on for me, I very much enjoyed during going up to New Hampshire during the past election, and to places like Laconia, and going and seeing okay, what's it actually like? It's only a 2-hour drive from Cambridge, but it's a world away, and to really go and see what are these people who are just getting by, who are just there to take care of their families, and really those folks who really represent the core of our country. What are they saying about what's going on right now, and hearing their concerns and what worries them? It's very different than what you'll hear if you knock on a door here in Cambridge. And unfortunately, I think that the best way to do it, I think there's two ways. First is to go and to read about it and to understand these contexts, but also I think to go and go to these places where there are, I don't like to use the term real Americans. I think everyone who's American is a real American, but I'd like to say middle America, kind of the mainstream of American culture. I think
the Trump zone.
In many ways, yeah.
The place where those kids were working in the pizza place yesterday, or maybe Harvard would protest that, saying that was child labor.
That's true. For the past 3 years, I've been writing about feminism. What is the climate of men and women and the attitude of feminism here at Harvard? Where do you see that?
Well, I think that a lot of people have, especially men, have some issues with the current trends in feminism, but are afraid to speak out about it because it has kind of become this dominant ideology, especially among kind of faculty, and I think especially among a lot of women here. And I think if you do speak out of it, or even say, have we thought about something different here, viciously attacked as someone who is a misogynist and against women and all these other things. And I think that it's a real shame that we haven't had these conversations, because I think that these are important issues, especially at a place like Harvard. You think about how people here are going to be future CEOs and governors and leaders of nonprofits and reporters and things like that. And the fact that we're not having conversations about the ideas that are being promulgated from here, I think is a real shame. And I think that whatever your stance on the issue, I think the idea of having discourse and debate is important. I think it's important to have a place where we can go and talk about the issues. And that's why, for us, we've been really focused on the idea of free speech, because I think that it's important for us to have debate and discourse. Do so respectfully, do so in a way that is reasoned and uses logic and facts.
Logic and facts? Oh my God, that's hate speech.
And and I think that the for us, I think that I think all opinions should be heard, and I think that if you disagree with them, you should go and argue against them with passion and with the power of the facts you have behind you, rather than saying that they shouldn't be heard.
So you feel like that the force of feminism on campus tends to silence dissent?
Absolutely, I agree with that. Yeah.
Let me ask one quick question. If you had an email list of 500 people, if you blasted out the email of Stacy's event on Saturday, how would that be received by the Harvard University if that was known, if that was done?
That would probably be a hate crime.
But can you give me a little context on your?
The event is called.
My speech is about radical feminism, a war against human nature.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, I think the people, so if I blasted that out to
say this event's happening in Fitchburg or Leominster, well, how do you think the reaction would be there?
Well, I think that there would definitely be some people who would be like, how dare they put out information at an event like that. However, we put out information for a lot of different events with people we don't necessarily agree with. And I think that...
Let me ask you something. You went up to New Hampshire during the past campaign. Who was your candidate in the Republican primaries?
So during the primaries, I was very involved in Jeb Bush's campaign. Governor Bush is someone, I'd grown up in Florida and very much admired his record there. And for me, I had a lot of folks who I knew personally who knew him and spoke very highly of his character and of his management skills. However, as a candidate, wasn't necessarily the campaign that he or us as his supporters wanted. But I think that he ran the way that he wanted to run, and he stayed true to his beliefs and his character. And I think that whatever you think about him or his issues, I think that deserves people's respect.
Okay, so you were a Jeb Bush man. Now, it was controversial last November that the Harvard College Republicans didn't endorse the nominee of the Republican Party. Did y'all get some blowback over that?
Oh yeah, we did, and it was expected. But for us, I think that at least this is something that Trump does, and he says what he believes, and doesn't really care about the political blowback of it. And in a sense, we said that what we believed, and we knew that there would be political fallout from it, and we understood that, but we did what we believed to be right and true to what we believed in as conservatives. And we know that certain people disagree with us on that, and especially a lot of Republicans. But I think that what we were trying to do was go and say that we felt that we could be better than that. And I think that for us, it's not just about winning an election. I think for us, the conservatives, I think conservatives really believe in this idea, of virtue and of, making sure that, we elect people of character and, those people that we can look up to. And unfortunately, I don't think either candidate in this past election necessarily fit that bill. I think that both candidates, had their strengths and their weaknesses. And I know that certain people came out, most people came out on one side of that, but I think that for us, we wanted to make a statement about what we believed as conservatives going forward, and that's what we did.
Night is falling here at Harvard University, and if parents in America are thinking about, they've got a kid who might qualify for Harvard, what should they tell their children as they're thinking of sending them to Harvard?
Well, I think they should send their kids to Harvard, and despite its drawbacks, and here's why. The people that you will interact with here, the opportunities you will have are incredible. And yes, your ideas will be tested, your views will be challenged, but guess what? It forces you to know your stuff. It forces you to know your arguments. Why do I believe what I believe? When you read the Federalist Papers and Alexis de Tocqueville, you begin to understand. If you take the right courses and stuff with the right professors, and you read the right books, and you get to know the right folks, you get involved in our conservative community here, you will not only survive as a conservative, you will thrive, and you will come out as a stronger conservative because of it. And you look at the folks that have come out of here, Tom Cotton, Ben Sass, Elise Stefanik, folks who are rock solid conservatives, because guess what? They had their ideas battle tested. And for them, it solidified their views rather than shaking them. So I think that they should absolutely have them